Flames clawed their way up the velvet curtains, turning the Don's mansion into a roaring furnace within minutes. Crystal chandeliers shattered as heat swallowed the grand hall, and guests who had been laughing moments ago now stumbled over each other in blind panic. Smoke thickened fast, choking the air, blurring vision, turning every exit into a guessing game. Amid the chaos, one figure didn't run. Lyra, dressed in a simple waitress uniform, moved with sharp precision. Her eyes scanned the room, calculating. 2 fingers raised, she signaled a group near the bar to stay low. A quick wave to the left directed another cluster toward a service corridor barely visible behind the smoke. No shouting, no wasted motion, just silent commands that somehow cut through the terror. A man collapsed near the staircase, gasping. Lyra dropped beside him, pressing 2 precise points along his neck and wrist. His body jerked, breath returning in a violent gasp. She pulled him up and pushed him toward a safer path, already moving again before he could speak. Above, a beam cracked. Lyra looked up once, then stepped back just as it crashed exactly where she had stood seconds earlier. Across the hall, a young woman froze, trapped as flames boxed her in. The Don's daughter. Lyra didn't hesitate. She grabbed a fallen tablecloth, soaked it in spilled wine, wrapped it around her arm, and charged straight through the fire. Moments later, she emerged from the smoke, dragging Sophia with her, alive. And for the first time that night, the Don noticed her. By the time sirens pierced the night, Lyra was gone. Fire crews flooded the ruins, dragging hoses across blackened marble, shouting over the crackle of dying flames. Survivors huddled outside, coughing, wrapped in blankets, their eyes wide with shock. The Don stood apart from them all, his suit stained with ash, his gaze fixed on the smoking skeleton of his mansion. "Find her," he said quietly. No name. No description. Just a command heavy enough to move an army. Inside the chaos, fragments of her presence began to surface. A guard swore she had guided him through a hallway that didn't exist. A guest insisted she predicted a collapsing ceiling seconds before it fell. Another described the strange hand signal she used, precise, deliberate, almost military. Sophia, pale but steady, repeated the same detail over and over. She knew the way out, before the fire even spread. That was what unsettled the Don. Not the rescue. Not the skill. The certainty. By morning, his men had combed every hospital, every street, every camera feed within miles. Nothing. No waitress on the guest list. No staff record. No trace of her entering, or leaving. It was as if she had stepped out of the fire itself, and vanished back into it. The Don turned away from the ruins, his jaw tightening. "Then we look deeper," he said. "Because whoever she was, she didn't just survive the fire. She understood it." The official report blamed a rival syndicate, faulty wiring, accelerants, a convenient story stitched together before the ashes had cooled. But the Don didn't buy it. He stood in a temporary office overlooking the charred remains of his estate, listening as his men argued over names and motives. "Too clean," he muttered. His advisor slid photos across the table, burn patterns, blast points, timelines. "Multiple ignition sources," he said. "Timed. Coordinated. An execution, not chaos." Across the city, whispers spread. Survivors described the same unsettling detail. The waitress moved like she'd seen it all before. Not panic, anticipation. One man insisted she redirected him seconds before a corridor turned into an inferno. Another swore she tapped a pressure point on his arm that snapped him out of shock instantly. The Don replayed Sophia's words in his mind. She knew the way out. That wasn't luck. That was design. Meanwhile, in a dim apartment far from the city's reach, Lyra cleaned soot from her hands in silence. A map lay open on the table, hand-drawn, precise, every corridor of the mansion marked with annotations. Exit routes. Structural weaknesses. Timing windows. She paused, staring at one marked section, the grand hall. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't supposed to go like that. she whispered. A burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring once, twice, then answered. A calm voice spoke on the other end, familiar and cold. You interfered. Lyra's grip tightened. I made a choice, she replied. A pause. Then, quietly. Then you've made yourself the next target. Rain fell over the city like a warning no one could read. In a safe house stripped to concrete and shadows, Lyra stood over a table scattered with maps, coded notes, and fragments of her past she couldn't ignore anymore. The burner phone lay silent now, but its message echoed louder than the storm outside. You interfered. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Across from her, Sophia watched. No longer just a frightened girl from the fire, but someone sharper now, driven by questions that wouldn't let her sleep. Who are you? Sophia asked quietly. Lyra didn't answer right away. Instead, she slid a page across the table, lines, symbols, arrows connecting buildings across the city like a hidden blueprint. This isn't about your father's enemies, she said. It's bigger. Sophia frowned. Bigger than a syndicate? Bigger than all of them. Elsewhere, the Don sat in a dimly lit room with his most trusted men. Reports piled in, accounts frozen, shipments intercepted, alliances suddenly broken. Precision attacks, one after another. Not brute force. Strategy. Someone was dismantling him piece by piece. Same pattern as the fire, his advisor noted. The Don's expression hardened. No, he said. This is something else. Back in the safe house, Lyra pointed to multiple locations on the map. They don't fight in the open. They control outcomes. Sophia's voice dropped. Who? Lyra finally met her eyes. The ones who decide who rises, and who burns. Thunder cracked overhead. And somewhere in the city, unseen forces were already moving their next piece. The first sign wasn't violence, it was silence. Phones stopped ringing. Accounts locked without warning. Loyal men vanished between one street and the next. The Don's empire, once loud and untouchable, began collapsing inward like it had been hollow all along. In his war room, screens flickered with errors and dead connections. We're being erased, one of his men said, panic creeping into his voice. Not attacked, removed. The Don stood still, absorbing it. No threats. No demands. Just precision. Across the city, Lyra moved fast. She pulled Sophia through a narrow alley, ducking under a half-closed shutter before anyone could notice. Inside, she locked the door and killed the lights. From now on, no names, no patterns, she said. They track behavior, not faces. Sophia's breathing was sharp. Who are they? Lyra hesitated, for the first time. My former command. The words landed hard. They trained me, she continued. Hand signals, pressure points, mapping exits in real time, controlling chaos. We weren't just operatives, we were variables in a system. Sophia stared at her. Then why save us? Lyra's eyes flickered with something deeper than regret. Because that night, I broke protocol. A distant explosion echoed through the streets. Lyra froze for half a second, calculating, listening, then grabbed Sophia's wrist. They've escalated. Escalated to what? Sophia asked. Lyra looked toward the city skyline, where faint plumes of smoke began to rise in different directions. Reset. And suddenly, the fire at the mansion felt like just the beginning. Night swallowed the city as if it were complicit. Entire blocks went dark in coordinated waves, power grids failing not randomly, but precisely. Sirens wailed in the distance, then cut off mid-cry. The kind of silence that followed wasn't peace. It was control. Inside an abandoned transit hub, the Don, Sophia, and Lyra stood over a final map, larger than the rest, layered with markings that stretched beyond the city limits. Routes, fallback points, blind zones. A design built years in advance. This is your network? The Don asked, his voice low. Lyra shook her head. It was never mine. I was just one of the pieces. She traced a path across the map, an intricate sequence of movements, each one timed to seconds. They think in outcomes. If we follow predictable behavior, we lose. Sophia leaned in. So we don't. Lyra met her eyes, a flicker of approval passing between them. We disappear between their expectations. Outside, footsteps echoed, too controlled to be random. They had been found. Lyra raised her hand slightly, 2 fingers, then a shift of her wrist. Sophia understood now, moving without a word to flank the exit point. The Don watched, realizing this silent language was more powerful than any order he could give. The door burst open. What followed wasn't chaos, it was precision. Lyra struck first, disabling one attacker with a calculated hit to the neck, redirecting another into Sophia's path. Every movement had purpose, every second accounted for. Then she reached the final mark on the map. No, she said. And the entire escape plan unfolded.